The Grand Council chamber of Virex Prime was built to remind visitors how small they were. The ceiling vanished into darkness, its curvature lost behind drifting bands of light that pulsed with translated languages. Thousands of species occupied tiered platforms carved from polished stone and living crystal. Gravity was normalized, atmosphere balanced, temperature regulated to the median comfort of beings that had never evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day. Humans sat near the bottom. Commander Elias Rourke stood with his hands folded behind his back, posture relaxed in the way only trained soldiers could manage. His uniform was plain by Concord standards: no luminous sigils, no bioreactive fabric, no ceremonial weapons. Just dark cloth, subdued insignia, and a small silver pin at his collar. Earth. Across the chamber, Officer Prefect Zerith Kale finished her report. And therefore, under Clause 17b of Concord compliance statutes, corrective physical enforcement was deemed appropriate. Her voice carried easily, amplified by the chamber's translators. She stood taller than most humans, her exoskeletal frame plated in pale ceramite, mandibles flexing with satisfaction rather than tension. The bruising along her knuckles was still visible. A ripple of approval passed through several delegations. Rourke did not move. The recording hovered between them, projected in clean, unforgiving detail. Helios 9's inspection bay. A human colony carved into rock dense enough to crush most off-world species. Steel walls scarred by decades of hard labor. Workers lined in orderly rows. No resistance. No weapons. And then the child. Small. Thin. Maybe 7 years old. Standing half-hidden behind her mother's leg, eyes wide with confusion rather than fear. The audio caught everything. She failed to respond to a lawful directive, Kale said calmly, as if narrating a weather pattern. Such hesitation indicates early defiance. In the footage, the child hesitated. She looked up. She opened her mouth. Kale struck her before a word came out. The sound echoed through the chamber again. Flat. Sharp. Final. No one interrupted the playback. Rourke's jaw tightened, just enough to ache. The chair of the council, an ancient being whose species no longer possessed limbs, pulsed a soft amber. Officer Prefect Kale, it intoned. Was lethal force employed? No, Kale replied. The subject survived. As per statute, the chair said. The law is clear. Several delegates inclined their heads in agreement. Rourke exhaled slowly through his nose. When the chair finally turned its attention to him, the room quieted. Commander Rourke, it said, do you contest the legality of the officer's actions? Rourke lifted his eyes. His voice, when he spoke, was even. No. A faint stir moved through the chamber. Surprise, perhaps. Disappointment from those who had hoped for a performance. But, Rourke continued, I contest your understanding of consequence. Kale's mandibles twitched. Commander, your species is new to the Concord. You would do well to separate emotion from governance. Rourke looked at her then. Really looked. You struck a child, he said. I enforce compliance, Kale replied. Your emotional framing is irrelevant. Rourke nodded once. That's what worries me. The chair pulsed again. Commander, unless you have a formal charge. No charge, Rourke said. No protest. No retaliation. Kale's posture relaxed, satisfaction settling visibly into her stance. The council moved on. The recording ended. The chamber lights dimmed slightly as attention shifted to the next agenda item: trade disputes between species that measured justice in profit margins and mineral rights. Rourke remained still until protocol allowed him to leave. Helios 9's infirmary smelled of antiseptic and recycled air. The gravity was heavier here, unadjusted for off-world visitors. Kale had complained about it during the inspection. Humans barely noticed. The child lay on a narrow bed, a faint bruise blooming across her cheek. Her mother sat beside her, silent, eyes hollow in the way only parents who had learned restraint too early could manage. Rourke stopped at the doorway. She'll recover, the medic said quietly. Physically. Rourke nodded. He stepped inside, crouching to the child's level. What's your name? He asked. She hesitated, then answered. Mara. I'm Elias, he said. I'm sorry I wasn't faster. Mara studied him for a moment, then asked, Did I do something wrong? The question landed harder than any accusation. No, Rourke said. You didn't. Her mother's fingers tightened around the bed frame. Rourke stood. He met the woman's eyes. I need you to understand something, he said softly. What happened to your daughter was legal. The woman didn't speak. And that, Rourke continued, is the problem. Outside the infirmary, he activated a secure channel. Rourke to Earth, he said. Priority civilian impact. The response came quickly. Go ahead. There's been an incident, Rourke said. No fatalities. One child injured. A pause. Not from confusion. From calculation. Understood, the voice replied. Do you require authorization? Rourke looked back through the infirmary window. No, he said. This is notification. Another pause. Longer this time. Acknowledged, the voice said at last. The channel closed. Officer Prefect Kale departed Helios 9 satisfied. Her report circulated quickly. Her peers praised her decisiveness. Her superiors noted her adherence to statute. She dined that evening in her quarters, recounting the incident to junior officers who laughed at the idea of humans believing themselves equals. They're disciplined, Kale said, sipping from a crystal vessel. But discipline breaks. She slept well. Commander Rourke did not. He sat alone in the human enclave, lights dimmed, watching the stars through reinforced glass. Ships moved in the distance, freighters, patrol craft, vessels that trusted the Concord's promise of order. He knew better. Restraint had been humanity's offering. Its proof of civilization. Its shield. But restraint was not infinite. Rourke stood and straightened his uniform. He sent one final message. Restraint period concluded. No further advisories forthcoming. Outside, Helios 9 turned slowly beneath the stars. The galaxy, unaware, continued as it always had, confident that laws were enough to keep monsters polite. It was wrong. Officer Prefect Zereth Kale returned to Virex Prime as a professional success. Her name appeared in 3 separate commendations within a single cycle. Clips of her Helios 9 inspections circulated through enforcement academies as exemplary footage, measured force, flawless adherence to statute, zero escalation. In private briefings, her superiors spoke of her as a model for handling high-resilience species. Kale accepted the praise without modesty. Humans understand hierarchy, she told a junior officer over a polished obsidian table. They simply pretend otherwise. Pain reminds them. The officer laughed, eager, inexperienced. Kale dismissed him with a flick of her mandible and rose from her seat. Her quarters overlooked the inner curve of the station, where traffic lanes traced pale lines across the void. She enjoyed the view. It reinforced scale, order, control. That night, she authorized no additional security. There was no alert. No forced entry. No weapon discharge recorded by station sensors. At 3:17 local cycle time, Officer Prefect Zereth Kale died. The first indication something was wrong came when Kale failed to appear for her scheduled debrief. Her aide waited. Then messaged. Then escalated. Security protocols activated with practiced efficiency. Her quarters were sealed. Internal scans initiated. Life signs returned null. The door opened without resistance. Kale's body lay centered on the floor. No signs of struggle marred the room. Furniture remained undisturbed. The walls bore no scoring, no residue. Her armor had been removed carefully and placed against the far wall, aligned with ceremonial precision. Her death was immediate. One clean incision at the base of the skull. Neural stem severed. No pain response. The pathologist later noted the cut was executed with a blade unsanctioned by Concord Armories, simple, dense, unadorned. Human steel. What unsettled them most was what followed. Her head was gone. The Grand Council chamber filled faster than protocol allowed. Delegations arrived agitated, voices overlapping in a dozen translated frequencies. Security drones hovered lower than usual. Enforcement officers lined the perimeter, weapons powered but unused. At the center of the chamber, on the polished stone floor where no one stood unless commanded, rested a single object. Officer Prefect Kale's head. It had been cleaned. Mandibles folded. Eyes closed. No blood stained the surface beneath it. Whoever had placed it there had done so gently, almost reverently. The chair pulsed a sharp crimson. "This is an act of war," a delegate hissed. "Barbarism," another snapped. Commander Elias Rourke stood among the human delegation, hands at his sides, expression unreadable. The chair turned toward him. "Commander Rourke," it said, its tones stripped of ceremony. "Explain." Rourke inclined his head slightly. "An officer of the Concord struck a human child. That matter was adjudicated," the chair replied. "Legally." "Yes," Rourke said. "So was this." The chamber erupted. "You admit culpability?" demanded a reptilian envoy, frills flaring. "I acknowledge causality," Rourke replied. "Not authorship." The chair pulsed again, this time slower. "Then enlighten us." Rourke gestured toward the head. "Officer Kale was not executed by the human military. No chain of command authorized retaliation. No formal action was taken." "Impossible," someone snarled. Rourke's gaze swept the chamber. "She was killed by a civilian." Silence fell, heavy and abrupt. "A civilian?" the chair repeated. "Yes." A data stream flickered to life above the floor. Footage. Not security feeds, those had recorded nothing, but a statement, time-stamped and authenticated. A human woman appeared. Her posture was straight. Her face was calm in the way grief sometimes sharpens rather than softens. "My name is Anna Cade," she said. "I am a resident of Helios 9. I am Mara Cade's mother." Several delegates recoiled. "I acted alone," Anna continued. "I violated no Concord law. Officer Kale entered our colony under legal authority. She struck my child under legal authority. I responded under the same framework." The chamber buzzed with furious whispers. "She infiltrated a high-security station," an envoy protested. "Yes," Anna said. "Your systems are optimized for threats. I was not a threat. How did you bypass enforcement?" Anna's eyes did not waver. "You never classified us as dangerous." The feed ended. Rourke spoke again. "Officer Kale was removed without collateral damage. No civilians were harmed. No infrastructure compromised. Her death was precise." "Savage," someone spat. Rourke's voice hardened, just slightly. "Savage is striking a child because the law permits it." The chair rotated slowly. "You will surrender this civilian?" "No," Rourke said. Weapons hummed to life around the chamber. Rourke did not flinch. "You cannot," he added. "Anna Cade turned herself into Earth jurisdiction. She is protected under human law. You defy the Concord." "No," Rourke replied. "We complied with it." The chair pulsed, cycling through hues of agitation. "This precedent is unacceptable." "Then amend your laws," Rourke said. "Because humans will not." In the hours that followed, the investigation stalled. No breaches found. No accomplices identified. No actionable failures in station security, only assumptions laid bare. Humans had walked through the heart of Virex Prime unseen, not by force, but by irrelevance. They had not tripped alarms because no one had thought to set them for grief. In private chambers, delegates whispered, "If civilians can do this, they were never constrained. What else have they chosen not to do?" Commander Rourke returned to the human enclave. He stood before a secure terminal as a familiar voice came through. "She's in custody," Earth Command said. Voluntary. Stable. Rourke closed his eyes briefly. Treat her well. We will. A pause followed. Was this inevitable? The voice asked. Rourke looked out at the station lights, still bright, still confident. Yes, he said. They just mistook silence for consent. The channel closed. Far across the chamber, Officer Cale's head was removed, sealed, catalogued as evidence. The Concord would debate sanctions. Humans would not debate anything. They had already answered. And the galaxy, for the first time, began to understand that Deathworlders did not need armies to make a point. Sometimes, they only needed a parent. The ultimatum arrived sealed in crimson authority. The Concord demanded surrender. Anacade was to be extradited, tried, and publicly dissolved under interstellar law. Humanity would issue a formal apology, accept punitive oversight, and submit to permanent compliance monitoring. In return, sanctions would be limited. Trade would resume. Earth would be allowed to remain. Allowed. Commander Elias Rourke read the transmission once. Then he stood, straightened his uniform, and walked into the Grand Council chamber for the final session humanity would ever attend as a subordinate species. Security presence had tripled. Heavy drones hovered close enough to cast shadows. Delegates filled every tier, tension crackling through translators and pheromonal cues alike. At the center platform, the chair pulsed a severe, unwavering white. Commander Rourke, it intoned. You have reviewed the terms. Yes, Rourke said. Do you accept them? Rourke did not answer immediately. He stepped forward, boots striking stone with deliberate calm. When he spoke, his voice carried without amplification. No. The chamber erupted. Threat displays flared. Weapons charged. Several delegates rose from their seats, outrage spilling into raw hostility. The chair pulsed violently. You reject mercy. Rourke looked up at it. No. You misunderstand mercy. Silence crept back in, forced by curiosity if not restraint. You believe mercy is permission, Rourke continued. Something granted downward by those who hold power. On Earth, mercy is something we choose to give. You murdered an officer, a delegate shouted. No, Rourke replied. A parent acted within your laws. You approved the conditions. You wrote the statutes. You enforced them selectively. We followed them precisely. The chair rotated, its tone sharpening. Then surrender the individual. Rourke shook his head. Anacade will not be surrendered. Then your species will face consequences. Rourke nodded once. We anticipated that. He tapped a control at his wrist. The chamber's panoramic display shifted, not to weapons, not to threats, but to space. Human ships appeared across the projection. Hundreds. Then thousands. Not mass for attack, not forming battle lines, but moving, clean vectors, outward trajectories, precise timing. Fleets disengaging from Concord lanes. Colonies powering independent drives. Supply chains rerouting in real time. A murmur spread. What is this? Demanded the chair. Departure, Rourke said. Every human asset within Concord territory is leaving. You cannot simply withdraw. A delegate snarled. Your colonies, your trade, your protections are yours, Rourke said. Which is why we're taking responsibility for ourselves. The display zoomed out. Human ships vanished into slip space, one after another. No hesitation. No delays. You threaten war, the chair said. Rourke's expression remained steady. No. We're refusing captivity. A long pause followed. You are a managed species, the chair said at last. Rourke's eyes hardened. We were. That classification was your first mistake. The chamber darkened as external data flooded in, economic projections collapsing, defense gaps widening, logistics unraveling. Humanity's quiet labor had supported more systems than the Concord cared to admit. A delegate whispered. They were holding everything together. Rourke heard it. We were contributing, he said. Because cooperation mattered to us. And now? the chair asked. No, Rourke replied. We're done pretending restraint is the same as weakness. The chair pulsed slower now. Calculating. You leave us no choice, it said. You always had a choice, Rourke answered. You chose to protect power instead of people. A new voice cut through the chamber. Commander Rourke. The sound carried a different weight, measured, human, distant. Earth Command. Rourke inclined his head slightly. Go ahead. Anna Cade has concluded her statement, the voice said. She has one request. Rourke hesitated, then nodded. Granted. Anna's image appeared above the floor once more. She stood in a simple room. No restraints. No guards visible. Her eyes were tired but clear. I won't run, she said. I won't hide behind anyone. I did what I did knowing the costs. The chamber watched in rapt silence. But you don't get to punish my species for my choice, Anna continued. And you don't get to call it justice. She looked directly into the projection, as if meeting the gaze of the chair itself. You struck my child because you could, she said. I ended that ability. The feed ended. No one spoke. The chair pulsed once, then dimmed slightly, a signal of forced concession. The Concord will revise Clause 17b, it said. Physical enforcement against juveniles will be prohibited. Rourke nodded. Good. The human species will be reclassified. The chair continued, its tone reluctant. Sovereign. Non-managed. A ripple of shock passed through the chamber. And Anna Cade? The chair asked. Rourke met its gaze. She will live with what she's done. On Earth. Among her people. The chair pulsed, then went still. So be it. The human enclave on Helios 9 emptied within days. Ships lifted cleanly from their berths, leaving behind reinforced habitats and silent corridors. Concord officials watched from a distance, uncertain whether to feel relieved or afraid. Commander Rourke stood on the observation deck as the last vessel departed. You think they learned? A junior officer asked quietly. Rourke watched the stars shift as the station rotated. They learned something, he said. Not enough. But enough. On Earth, Mara Cade returned to school. The bruise had faded. The memory had not. But she walked a little taller now, surrounded by teachers who understood vigilance and classmates who understood solidarity. At night, the stars looked the same. Far beyond them, the Concord amended its laws and updated its threat models, finally adding a new classification. Deathworlders. Not as a warning. As a fact. Because mercy, once exhausted, leaves behind something far older. And humanity had reminded the galaxy, quietly, decisively, that survival was not negotiable.